So thank you all for joining us on this webinar about gender perceptions in science and engineering. This is the agenda for today, and I'd like to hand over to Professor Jung Kim for the welcome.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'd like to welcome everybody from all over the world. Good morning to some of you, good afternoon to some of you, and good evening to those who are in Korea and in Mongolia. I'm very glad that many of you could make it. I know this is a very busy time for everyone, but this is a very important webinar in the sense that this is our first study done by INWES in collaboration with KWSE to find indices or to find the or to actually produce data that would serve as numbers that we can use to communicate with many of our governments or to the world as to show the situation of women in STEM, especially in the aspect of the perception of gender barriers. So Sarah Pierce is going to give you a brief outline of the outcomes of this year's project. But before that, I would like to give a very brief introduction of INWES, because I know some of you are new to this group. INWES is the International Network of Women Engineers and Scientists, and we are a global network of organizations of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We are an NGO partner to UNESCO and also to the UN ECOSOC, and we also have the observer status with the UNFCCC, and we are also in collaboration with CSW, which is the Commission for the Status of Women. We comprise of over 50 organizational members plus some individual members, and we represent about 250,000 women from about 50 countries worldwide. Our mission is to build a better future worldwide through full and effective participation of women and girls in all aspects of STEM. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So GISE project is one of the projects that INWES is involved with. And this is something that INWES has started new in 2021 with the support from KWSE. I would like to first of all express my deepest gratitude to Sarah Pierce, who has served as the INWES project manager for this project. It's a lot of work, and I know she has been doing so much, and you will see the results in very shortly. And Battsengel Baatar, who is our VP, Vice President of Education and Research, who has been also working on this together with Sarah Pierce. We had many people who were involved with this project. We had our two very important senior advisors who were Professor Clem Herman and Professor Kongjibok Lee. And also, we also had advisory group meetings, and also many of you have been helping with this project in terms of disseminating and also collecting the surveys. So I would like to thank everybody, including Agrina Cano, Ariun Balor Purvi, Belen Garcia, Heong Park, Maria Jose Morales Garcia, Nadia Ghazali, Najla Trikli, Rufina Dabusar, Seema Singh, and the late Fatoumata Balde, who we miss very much. Statistical analysis was done by David Emmond, who was introduced to us by our Deputy President, Nadia Ghazali. And of course, we cannot do anything without administrative support from KWSE. Their secretariat has been of great help, and also a big thank you to Hyunjung Jang. To give you a background briefly of the GISE project, we have signed an MOU last year, or not last year, this year actually, in January, to initiate this study with KWSE. The project is funded by the government of South Korea, and the initial aim was to compare the status of women in STEM in Korea with other countries all over the world. The study was actually first started in 2014, and a 5-year study had already been conducted by KWSE. At that time, the study was focused on APNN countries, and APNN is the Asia Pacific Nations Network, which is the first regional network of INWES. But because there was a need to expand further this study, and with the cooperation with INWES, I think now the study could become a more international study with more global cooperation, and we're anticipating a very more inclusive and diversified outcomes with the help of, or with the participation of members of INWES. The purpose or the scope of the study is outlined in this slide. And just to give you a very brief target and the aim of the study is it was that we wanted to do a study with a minimum of respondents from 10 countries and a minimum of 1,000 respondents altogether, comprising of both men and women in STEM. And the regions that were covered included Asia, Africa, Europe, with Americas, including Latin America, although I don't think we had a sufficient number this year, and we're hoping that we can get more responses next year. We had a budget that we could use from KWSE, and this I will talk about towards the end of today's webinar. So again, a very big thank you for those who have participated, and welcome to those who are new to this webinar, and we welcome more participants. We need more volunteers, and we need more voices to make this study even better next year. So now I would like to hand over the floor to Sarah, who will give us the summary of this year's project. Sarah?
Thank you very much, Jung-sun. So just to emphasize that this first year there's an international survey was a pilot project. So one of the key things that we were trying to do was work out exactly how we would disseminate the questionnaire and what was needed to, how the questionnaire needed to be adapted for different countries and different regions. It is the pilot survey itself has been completed in terms of gathering data, but I was just explaining to Jung-sun, there's still people every now and again replying to the survey. I haven't closed it down completely, and there's a very good reason for that, because we want to continue gathering data over the next few years and perhaps compare from year to year what is happening. So very briefly, we had a plan in place over different phases. And in fact, Seema has pointed out in the chat, wasn't it supposed to be completed by now? We had planned to have a final report ready by now, but for various reasons, including illness, there have been a couple of delays. But we do have some preliminary results that are interesting, and we are planning to have the detailed technical report completed in January, but also some public communications resources. And there are still a few analyses based on some of the preliminary work on the results, the statistical results, that we can still carry out, and I'll be working on that over the next few days. So the key outputs from this project is the process, never mind the actual data, but making sure that we have a process that seems to work or is robust in some way. But we also have some results that we can think about, and then the other very key output is the lessons learned, what things went wrong, what things went right, and how can we improve in the future. The questionnaire itself was based on an existing, on the APNN survey that Jung-sun mentioned. And it is very much about the perceptions of individuals. So we're not counting people necessarily, although of course, every time that somebody answers, we've got one more person that we know is a scientist or engineer. But so the key questions were around the perceptions of entry, of the barriers to entry in science and technology and engineering. But then there were two sections, which one was aimed at women and the other one was aimed at men. Now, we also, one of the things that we also did in this questionnaire was look at is to consider gender more broadly, but because we are focused very much on the female experience, we asked people who might identify as other than the gender that they were born as, or that they would identify whether they consider themselves to be more male or more female, and then we put them with the men or with the women accordingly. It's not ideal, but in reality we had I think only 2 respondents saying that they identified as something in between, non-binary if you like, something in between female and male. So it didn't have any effect on our statistics. The section on the career outlook and the need for support policies was, were questions around, do you think there needs to be structured support to make sure that that gender issues, gender diversity were addressed by companies and government? Section F was an interesting section because that was really about what are the gender roles? What do people think that men and women should do naturally or not? So there's some interesting results have come out of that as well. Section G was about the actual barriers when working, when studying. And then section H was a question to assess whether or not people felt that their own careers had been impacted by gender barriers. We used the Likert scale just as it was used in the previous surveys, where 1 represented strongly agreed or had experienced, and 5 represented strongly disagreed with the statement or had not experienced. And then section A was considerably expanded compared to previous surveys, because we were going to be looking internationally and because we were interested in aspects of age and career paths and so on, and also socioeconomic backgrounds. For example, in some countries, rural versus urban backgrounds are very important. And these are variables that could have an impact in terms of what they call confounding variables in statistics, in terms of, they could have a big impact on the women from rural backgrounds could be very different from the women in urban backgrounds, for example. And then also identifying family circumstances, because I think in the future we'd also like to do much more around seeing what cultural issues impact women in different countries, and not all countries have exactly the same issues around the family responsibilities. So we actually sent out the questionnaire as a Google form. There was quite a lot of work getting to that point. We also actually translated it into several different languages. So there are lots of lessons learned about how to carry out the translation of a questionnaire for the future. So I've shown here more or less what it looked like in Google form, and again, some lessons around all of that. Now, you also notice the down here, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Is my cursor on view? Oh, good. Okay. So if I point over here to the main field of study for your first university level degree, one of the aspects that we decided upon in the project was to try and focus on different STEM sectors. Now, it's not that we are only interested in these STEM sectors. In the future, we want to have all STEM sectors, so biologists, chemists, but also all types of engineers and all types of computer scientists, whether industrially based or whether they're theoretical computer scientists, etc. And of course, mathematicians as well. Mustn't forget mathematicians. So, but for the purposes, as part of this pilot project, one of the things we wanted to test was, can we actually get people to, and what might happen if we're trying to identify what majors, what specialisms they are in. So we asked the question, what had you studied, and whether you could fit into biological sciences or mechanical or civil engineering or digital computing sciences. So they were our areas of focus. We also asked, are you still working in those areas? So there was a follow-up question to that. Oh, apologies, let me go back. And also, but I'll explain a little bit more about some of the lessons learned there. And we also wrote a web page, and that questionnaire was delivered. You can see the languages here in French, in English, French, in Japanese, in Korean, in Mongolian, and in Spanish as well, complete with glossaries, and also considering issues of data protection and privacy as well for that was appropriate from an international point of view. So these were practical matters that were put into place, and most of it worked okay, I think. In terms of did we achieve the basics? I think we did. We actually got more than 12,000 responses in total. We were asked to make sure that we had at least 10 countries. In fact, there were 29 countries in total. Now, admittedly, there are some countries, for example, Argentina, I think there was one response, but we could group some of these together in terms of regions. And then, of course, we wanted a balanced target of 50-50 female male. It was, I think, pretty well achieved. However, this does hide some imbalances in some of the countries. So Seema, you'll spot in a moment. Thank you very much for your work in India, because actually there were a lot of male Indian scientists who responded to this survey, and they balanced out the global balance. But and then in terms of the 3 specialisms, and by the way, this is bioscientists, the glossary explained exactly who we included in that specialization, because it's not easy to categorize different sectors, but we included bioscientists, and the engineers were mechanical and civil engineers. There are, of course, many other engineers, and then the IT and computer scientists as a sort of block. So we were hoping for a balance of a third, more or less, but we didn't quite get there. So you notice the bioscientists globally were quite low, but again, this hides imbalances in different countries. And then we also had other STEM, a category of other STEM, which is more or less 10% of the total responses. The initial analyses that we have carried out, we have looked at the global comparisons just by gender, men versus women, global comparisons of the 3 different areas of focus, the bioscience, mechanical and civil engineering, and IT, or digital computing. We also looked at Korea, South Korea versus the rest of the regions, because obviously as this is being funded by KWSE and the Korean government, I think you'd be very interested to know how they compare to other countries. And then for the regions and countries where we had more than 100 responses, then we also then looked in more detail for each one of those regions at the comparisons against gender and STEM areas of focus. We still want to do a little bit more analyses. We just wanted to check that these were working, that the statistics were coming out with something sensible. But we will be looking at levels of economic and human development. So looking at countries according to human development and economic indices, and so clustering those to then carry out a comparison. And the other element to do is to finalize some gender index proposals. And I have some thoughts, but I'm going to have to share them by email, I think. So I mentioned the imbalances. So if you notice over here, if we look at the biosciences, we have many more women responding than men. It's not so bad elsewhere, but here we go there. So that was the total number of women who responded versus the total number of men, and that doesn't look so bad. And in terms of the imbalances of gender and the different countries and regions, you can see in Korea, we had a lot of women responding. And then in the MENA regions, which is the Middle East and Northern African regions, we only had we had a relatively low response rate. And again, there's some lessons learned about this as well, but there were many more women than men responding. But you can see here in India, thank you, Seema, many men responded here to the survey. In terms of actually trying to break down, you know, gender and the STEM sectors and the regions, once again, you can see some of the imbalances. So many more bio female than engineers and IT. And then the low responses in the Americas. Actually, I'm not really sure why I put that in red. I think that was a mistake. I'm sorry. But we have certainly low responses in some areas, and we'll talk more about that. By the way, APNN, this is the other Asian and Pacific nation countries, because of course, Korea is also part of APNN, India is part of APNN, and so is Mongolia. Okay. And over here as well, you can see, I'm just trying to see where that's India. In India, we had many male engineers and IT professionals responding, but very few in biosciences. Oh, apologies, it's deciding not to move on. There you go. So some statistics, I'll try and be a little bit brief about this. The statistical analysis that's been carried out. Apologies, there we go. The statistical analysis that has been carried out is there's been two basic tests that were carried out. We did a t-test, which is to compare two different groups, and an ANOVA test to compare 3 groups at a time. So in particular for men and women, it was 2 groups. For the STEM sectors, it was the 3 different groups. Where the data conditions were not validated, and by that is there are certain assumptions about how you can, you know, when you can use these tests. When David Emmond was not convinced that the data actually met those conditions, and it's to do with whether it's a normal distribution in the background or not, he then also carried out further tests, but actually often the conclusions were exactly the same as for the non. So you see, so he would use the basic 2 tests, and if he wasn't sure, he would then add more tests to check whether or not the results were appropriate. And in general, they were appropriate. So, and we also did a quick comparison of the actual mean values and variances for the groups. And by mean values, I'm talking about the average. We talked about the Likert scale from 1 to 5. So 1 meant total agreement, 5 meant total disagreement. So if we have a mean value of 3, that means on average, people are neutral over that particular aspect. However, you can have also the variance, because it could be that there are some people who are completely in agreement and some people completely in disagreement. So we could do a little bit of comparison about that. Some preliminary analysis, and I'll try and keep this really brief and really high level. There seems to be a global war of the sexes, which is not unexpected. And by that, please don't worry, I'm just trying to show you that this is the sort of thing that we've been doing in the background. So if you can read this, but you don't have to read it at all, anything in green or in red, it's because either men and women are so the greens are that women are agreeing and men, sorry, the other way around, women are disagreeing and men are agreeing with that statement. And the reds, it's because women are agreeing and men are disagreeing a little bit more. The important values in terms of deciding whether or not these are statistically interesting and relevant is this p-value over here. If it's 0, we are statistically very, very confident that there are differences in the two groups. So you can see how many zeros there are here, hence the war of the sexes. There are essential differences in whether how men and women feel about some of these statements. But in particular, the ones I've highlighted are these first three at the top here. H3, I have not been personally affected by gender barriers in STEM. And women saying, yeah, I have been affected. And men are saying, no, I haven't been affected. Women feel that women in general women are disagreeing with that. Sorry, I have been affected, so they are disagreeing. Women are disagreeing that they receive the same social evaluation and respect as men in their roles, while men seem to think that women are being receiving the same respect as men. Well, women disagree that they receive appraisal award, the same level of appraisal and award, while men agree that women do receive the same. So there's an instant, misperception, miscommunication between the two sexes. And then at the other extreme, women do agree that we should introduce quota systems or affirmative actions, while men tend to disagree. And these p-values tell us that there is, we are confident, and these t-values tell us that there is significantly big differences between the two groups. If we look at the STEM areas of focus and globally, then we also see that these are the three statements where there seems to be some differences between the three: bioscientists versus mechanical civil engineers versus digital technologists. And interestingly, engineers and digital technologists, this is globally, of course, so again, there might be imbalances in different countries, please be aware of that. But it does seem that bioscientists tend to disagree a little bit more with these statements than engineers and digital technologists. Now, this is interesting because we know there are more women in bioscience generally compared to men. But the women in bioscience, bioscientists actually saying, marriage, pregnancy, and childcare do affect our study, our research, or work performance. While engineers and digital technologies are saying, no, it seems to be, it's not as clear cut as that, by the way, but that's the tendency. Bioscientists, in spite of the fact that there's so many women in bioscience, bioscientists tend to disagree that they get the same respect and social evaluation as their male colleagues. So, and then bioscientists tend to disagree, tend to think that they are personally affected by gender barriers in STEM a little bit more than engineers and digital technologists. So we need to be aware of that. When we're talking about how increasing numbers of women. It's possible that maybe increasing numbers of women in engineering and science generally isn't the final solution. We have to do more. Other notable results, I will pick a few because I'm already concerned about time, a little bit of time. In Japan, there's big disagreement with these between the genders in these two statements. So women are not confident about the future, but men seem to think that things will be sorted out. Women feel that they're not granted the same roles, but men disagree. They say, yes, you are. In Europe, the same, in terms of entry to STEM, women were much more likely to say, we're not getting the same sort of work distribution and the same sort of work appraisals. In Mongolia, in academia, it clearly is an issue, as well. Oh, sorry, no, this is the ones, apologies, I've got Windows hiding my slides, apologies. I want to check this because this is a rare show of men being allies to women, because they're more likely to say that women find it harder to be promoted. I'm going to check whether or not this is an error in the questionnaire, because this is unusual, but it might be that is so. Something that might be of great interest to the Korean our Korean colleagues is that section F, which is about basic gender roles, should men be the breadwinners? Are women better at child rearing, etc.? Korean scientists and engineers are notably more gender egalitarian compared to the rest of the world. I will do some comparisons against Europe, say, and maybe Northern America, maybe in the future, but because we tend to be a little bit more gender egalitarian as well. But this is very interesting. Now, I did actually originally write Koreans are notably gender egalitarian, and then I thought, no, these are the scientists and engineers in Korea who might be more gender egalitarian. Some interesting things there about, IT professionals that seem to be slightly more gender egalitarian in Europe than the other two groups, but only slightly. This is slightly worrying. In Korea, in biosciences, this has been seen a lot, sexual harassment. So this is very interesting. And then if we look at, the mean values of section C versus section D, section C being the direct experiences of women and section D, indirect experiences of women, across the world, in India, Europe, and Japan, women report negative experiences much more often than men report seeing or hearing of them. So this is quite an interesting thing in terms of trying to ensure that we have male allies and understanding what some of the issues are. So more thoughts. Well, there's lots of lessons learned, logistical and practical and statistical. So the areas of STEM focus, one of the issues we had was at first we had very little take up of the questionnaire, where people were saying, oh, I can't find people who are in these groups specifically. So one of the things we did was then say, well, okay, anybody can answer. But you notice from the final results, we still managed to identify a lot of people from the biosciences, a lot of people who are mechanical or civil engineering, and a lot of people in the digital. So it was interesting that we tried to specialize right at the beginning, and that slowed down the responses. But as soon as we opened it up, we actually found a lot of people. The data collection for the confounding variables, that was very tough to do. And I'm not sure that we've used that data yet, but maybe we will in the future. The translations worked relatively smoothly, apart from the fact that the numbering of the questions, I realized at the very end that I had to translate backwards because I hadn't kept the numbering of the questions. So hence the coding and question numbering. The other big lesson was the disseminators did say to me, we don't know whether or not people are responding. And the way I had set it all up, it was difficult to feed the information back to the disseminators. So that's one of the things that we will be working to make sure disseminators can instantly find out whether or not they're getting the responses for their efforts. So I know that was an issue in Latin America and MENA, and I know SEMA worked very hard prompting me all the time for information. Hence why India, there's so many responses. But and the other big problem we had was Google is not acceptable anywhere. So I think for a truly international survey and for longer surveys, we might have to have multiple online versions, but we have to be very consistent throughout. Statistical, the areas of STEM focus turned out to be not the problem that we were worrying about halfway through. The sample sizes, we had a lot of debate over the sample sizes. You will notice that there are a lot of, I mentioned the p-values being, which is a confidence level values being very high indeed. I.e. the p-values were very low, that means very high confidence values. So we didn't worry, we didn't have the problem we thought we were going to have, but the discussion on sample sizes led to other discussions, which I'll mention in a moment. We were asked to base it on the numbers of people in STEM. but we just don't have that data. And also on population size, but I'll show what happens at that. What we haven't yet done is analyze the Caucasian career stage, which is what, but that's difficult. That's the confounding variables. There's a lot to do there, and I'm not sure that we can do this as part of the pilot after all. And there are we were asked, different regions, different countries asked for extra variables, extra data to be collected, and we haven't yet analysed that, but we're hoping that the countries themselves might make use of that. And one of the things that we have to check is for errors in responses. We don't think, there's definitely a feeling that there aren't too many errors in responses, apart from that one about the male scientists in Mongolia being very active, very gender aware, but I've got to check that one. On sample sizes, what we ended up doing was looking at what the World Economic Forum has as an index, which is a perception of availability of scientists and engineers across the world. I emphasize a perception. These are not true figures. This is, they've carried out surveys asking engineers and scientists and industry and academia, do you think you have enough scientists and engineers? And then we could use that to try and estimate, we can use that index, the World Economic Forum index, which is this over here, and compare it combine it with the population size to end up with a sample size for our survey. So if we wanted a minimum of 100 people from Korea, then we would need nearly 3,000 people responses from India. So you can see how unbalanced this is. So in practice, we didn't use this, but it showed how we needed to think, in the future, we might need to think much harder about this. The next piece of work is this gender index, and I think what I'm going to be proposing in the final report is that we look at a couple of gender indices that look at the gaps in gender perceptions, because one thing is there being an issue, another thing is there being an awareness of the issue. And if there is, so I think two indices, which is one which is saying, yes, there's an issue, women are perceiving an issue, and then the next one being, and men and women are both perceiving the issue in the same way, because if the gap between men and women and the different sectors is low, then you have a chance to make changes quite easily. If the gap of the perceptions is very high, then the first thing you've got to do is raise awareness of those of the issues. And instead of looking at countries, we might want to compare regions around the world which have got similar gender, economic, and human development levels. And of course, there is quite a lot of work to link to other international data. I'm also going to be, I'm also going to be proposing that we enlist more male influencers in STEM, because that might help as well as future work. Something that was not considered at all, because we haven't considered it until 2020, is the impact of COVID-19, and maybe we need to consider that. We didn't include much on job roles as well as STEM specialisms. And then another big area to consider is non-professional roles. Over here, we're focusing very much on professional roles. I think I need to stop there because I know I have spent far too much time. Next steps is to complete the final small analyses, to produce a technical report, which is, we have a draft one, but we need to produce the final one. And the summary and key messages. And I just wanted to show this cartoon, because a technical report with a lot of detail isn't always very easy to read. So we need some sort of short report that people can immediately see what the big issues are, whether we're screaming, or whether we're asking for money, whether we think we've done a good job, or where we are happy. The Korean, these reports have to be translated into Korean. They might be translated to other languages as well, and we will have events to share these publications. I'd like to stop there. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Sarah. As you can see, there has been a lot of work done for this project, and due to the time restraint that we have, we cannot show you everything. But we hope to do so next year over more webinars and more discussions. And the report should be out for everybody to read. And I couldn't agree more with this cartoon, because I know that in the past, when we published our very thick report from KWSE, I could feel that everybody wanted this because they saw the report. But I think what we need to show, or what we need to convey, is in very simple terms what the strong message is. And I think we're going to try to work on this as well. So thank you so much, Sarah. I know that there was a comment in the chat by our guest from WFSW, and it was in French, and Hyunjung translated it for us with the Google Translator, and I hope I'll read this to you. It says, hello and congratulations for this very useful work. I'm not an English speaker, but I understand the basics. In our reflections, I think that we will have to take into account the recommendation on open science adopted by the 193 countries of UNESCO. It contains very positive recommendations for women scientists friendly. So I think this has something to do with the women friendly environment issue. So Sarah, do you want to maybe briefly comment on this? Or we can leave
no, thank you for raising that. That's in fact, if people could point out any such activities, international activities, global activities of that nature, then I will certainly include it in the report, either as a sort of, if I have time to actually comment on whether or not these the findings so far match are aligned to whatever those reports are, or whether it's a future piece of work to make sure that we are aligned with that and in agreement with that, or not. We might actually disagree with some of the international results, but I'm sure we won't. I noticed the comment, I don't think the result from Mongolia is an error. I hope not. If so, we can then show that it is possible to change men's minds and have them as allies for women in STEM. I hope it's not an error.
Great. But I think we have to also remember that the respondents were scientists and engineers, and that's probably true. Was one reason.
Yes. Maybe we need to extend this survey to politicians and people who govern and lead, and maybe we'll see that differences there, and in which case we might have to propose changes and action for our politicians.
Okay, I think we can leave the discussion for future webinars, and also we will, have the report out, and I'm sure there will be many more opportunities for us to discuss. Oh, yes, Rufina, yes, I was just going to do that. I would like to welcome Josette. She's who just raised the question. I don't know if you can see her. I think she stepped out for a while, but she's a member of the World Federation of Scientific Workers, which is also an NGO partner of UNESCO, and the World Federation of Scientific Workers and INWES has an MOU signed, and we are partners. So we're very glad that you could join us today. When she returns, I think we will maybe give her a minute to speak. But for now, yes, I think because of the time, I think we can move on to the next. And I know there are other comments that you can see in the chat, Sarah, so maybe we can respond to this a little later. But for now, we have Yetunde Holloway from WFEO, if I am correct. Yes.
So Yetunde, I'm very sorry. Now you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, so I would like to invite Yetunde to give a brief presentation about, and just so that for your information, INWES is currently discussing possible opportunities to collaborate on similar projects, or for this current project with the WFEO Women in Engineering Group. And so I think this is a very good opportunity for us to hear of what's going on with the WFEO-IE, and then we can also have further discussions later. So Yetunde, please share your slides.
Are my slides visible?
Yes, you can see it very well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Yetunde Holloway. I'm a civil engineer and
Oops. Yetunde? Maybe I think she was just there. I think she's back. Yetunde, we cannot hear you. Are you still there?
very well. I can hear you very well. Should I make it louder?
No, I think you froze for a moment there, Yetunde. If you'd like to start again with, we heard that you were a civil engineer and then you stopped.
Yes. I'm the chair of the Women in Engineering Committee of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations and the Federation of African Engineering Organizations. I greet President Jung and all the ladies here. I greet Sarah with many thanks for pushing and prodding. I recognize Belen and I recognize Jung from the climate change conference that we had, climate change webinars that we had. She participated. I'm sorry, I saw some other names that I feel I've met. I think I've had a conversation with Rufina before. I think that's about it anyway. So hello everybody from Lagos, Nigeria. Hi. So I can't hope to match Sarah. Sarah is brilliant, but I'll do my best. What I'm going to talk about briefly is what the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, WFEO, does. I'll talk about the committee and our 4 themes, mission and vision. Then I'll show some of our activities in 2021. And then I will go to theme 3, which is what we're talking about today, the engineering strategic indicators. Then I'll talk about Engineers Canada and their 30 by 30 initiative. And I will want us to discuss how we can collaborate for greater effectiveness and results. The World Federation of Engineering Organizations is an international organization for the engineering profession. It was founded in 1968 under the auspices of the UNESCO. And the WFEO brings together national engineering institutions from about 100 nations and represents more than 30 million engineers worldwide. The Women in Engineering Committee is a policy implementation committee of WFEO. The mission is to promote equality, diversity, and inclusivity in the engineering world with focus on women. That's our mission. And our vision is to seek ways to harness the collective power of our group using technological skills to achieve an engineering profession which attracts, retains, promotes, and welcomes the input of women and other underrepresented groups in order to achieve an engineering profession and that is in a sustainable world, which leaves no one behind. And we have 4 strategic themes. The first one is engineering workforce capacity building to increase diversity and inclusivity in the future skills pipeline. We also have engineering workforce capacity building again to encourage female engineering retention and leadership. I was unmuted. I was muted. Did you do that on purpose, Sarah?
No, I'm very sorry. I did actually mute you accidentally. I'm very sorry. I was just trying to click somebody in. So
it doesn't matter.
Apologies.
No problem. So the second theme is engineering workforce capacity building to encourage female engineering retention and leadership. Because it's one thing for females to enter into engineering, but the retention is very important, and then for them to aspire and to achieve leadership roles. Then the third theme, which is what we're talking about today, collection and obviously an analysis of engineering strategic indicators. And the fourth one, working in partnership to address the sustainable development goals, which everybody's on about now, with particular emphasis on goal 5, which is gender equality and its relationship with the other goals, in particular SDG 13, climate change, and SDG 17, partnership across the goals. So partnership across the goals, the webinar today is one of such partnerships. When Sarah reached out to me, it was important for me to be here because we need to partner with each other, and together we achieve more. Team. Together everyone achieves more. Sarah, this has to be you again. The thing is, it's not moving. Sarah, what have you done? What have you done to my slides? Okay, then. So I'm just sharing here some of the posters for the webinars that we had in 2021. Jung took part in the webinar series on climate change, gender, and engineering. Those are the ones on the left. We had such interest, and some of our members took the outputs or the outcomes to the COP26 in Glasgow in November. And then the two on the right are on the theme 1, theme 2, female retention in engineering and leadership. Theme 2 our theme 2 of the so these webinars are aligned with our strategic goals and with our themes, with our overarching themes. So the Women's Institute for Science, Equity and Race, they've told us that when ethnicity, race, gender, and other demographic data are disaggregated, the results can inform policies to increase the well-being of targeted groups, rather than simply to provide a standardized approach aimed at women, racial, or ethnic groups. So clearly, we're not the only ones that recognize that there's a need for disaggregated data. And data is king. So disaggregated, I'm sorry I talk about engineering because that's what we are, but at the end of the day, it's everybody. Disaggregated data in engineering will help to understand trends. It will provide a stronger basis for comparative analysis across countries and regions and demographic groups. And it will enhance understanding of the leaky pipeline. Why are women dropping out of engineering? At what stage do they drop out of engineering? What can we do to support them to remain in engineering, or to, if they have to leave for a while for childbirth or family matters, how can they come back and be fully assimilated back into the profession? So this creates an opportunity for leadership to collect and assess gender disaggregated global data on engineering, according to definitions and methodologies which will be well defined and will be available for benchmarking across the entire world. The UNESCO Cracking the Code also tells us that internationally comparable data are needed on a larger scale to ensure evidence-informed planning and policy making, and also for documentation of effectiveness and impact of the interventions that are carried out. So now, theme 3, the engineering strategic indicators of the Women in Engineering Committee. We also assert that there's a lack of reliable data on the number of women qualifying as engineers, working in engineering, in the engineering sector, and gaining professional status as registered engineers on a global level. It's a bit confusing because some people are technical people, they're not, they graduate to become full-fledged engineers, but we can start off with gaining professional status as registered engineers on a global level. That would be a starting point. And then as time goes on, we can expand to other people that do ancillary jobs to full engineering or registered engineering. And this lack of available data, it limits the ability to evaluate needs, to accurately calculate the gender disparity in engineering. And of course, this applies to STEM, to objectively assess the type and impact of actions needed, and also limits us the ability to advocate for initiatives and for increases, things, you know, to say, look, if you have a million engineers, you have only 20,000 female engineers. We don't have figures like that that we can use for advocacy. So the framework that we have in mind is to work with in partnership with WFEO individual and national members, partners like INWES, and collaborations like this, and the engineering indicators to identify standard metrics. And the plan is to collect and publish this disaggregated data annually. The data must be analyzed and establish prima facie evidence on the regional and global gender gaps in engineering. And we also have created a gender scorecard for WFEO and partners. And with all this information, we want to stimulate the integration of gender mainstreaming policies across the World Federation of Engineering Organizations and professional engineering organizations and institutions. So Engineers Canada, their initiative, we got the scorecard from them, we adapted it from them, and they have a 30 by 30 initiative. And they are working, I don't know how much time, okay, they're working to increase the representation of women within engineering through their 30-30 initiative. 30% is universally held as the tipping point for sustainable change. So reaching 30 by 30 in Africa particularly, because I have some African sisters here, will help drive the shift in the overall membership of the engineering profession as more and more women continue to enter the profession. So we are collaborating with Engineers Canada to adopt the 30 by 30 initiative. The lady in the WI committee, one of the ladies who is a team lead is Jeanette Southwood. She's from Canada, clearly so. She's from Canada, and she is the one that informed us about this, and we have, after explaining to us in the committee, we were able to understand that this is where we were going, and we've adopted and adapted the scorecard, which is the things, this is the information that we want in the scorecard. Now the information is actually very basic, but then we have to start from basic to increase and get more information. So the metrics listed on the scorecard are, and they're disaggregated metrics. So the percentage and number of licensed engineers, professionally registered, percentage and number of newly licensed engineers for that particular year, a percentage and number of engineers in training, percentage and number of newly registered engineers in training, student members, mentorship program participants, scholarship number, okay, there's a mistake there. I'd seen earlier, sorry about that. Percentage and number of scholarship recipients where an officially recognized institutional scheme exists. Then percentage and number of regulator council members. And then any other country regulator specific metrics, because what happens in Taiwan or Japan or the UK may not necessarily happen in Nigeria. And the regulators can use the scorecards to set their own yearly targets, like the 30 by 30. It doesn't have to be 30 by 30. You don't have to be so ambitious. Let's see. For example, in Nigeria, in filling the regulator forms, we were never asked to fill in our gender. The assumption is that all people filling those forms are male. It's only in the past 2 years they've introduced the part to state your gender. And it means that we are not able to give those figures. And with the population of over 200 million, we have about 200 million people, maybe number of engineers is also shaky. There's a lot of migration, brain drain going on in Africa, in my country especially. So I'm not actually able to tell you the number of engineers. But if we look on the register, how many people have registered to date, how many female engineers, we wouldn't be able to get that information. And how many people dropped off, stopped paying? When did they drop off the ladder? Was it due to death? Was it due to marriage? Was it due to lack of interest? Was it due to cultural problems? We're not able to tell you those things. So what we want going forward from member countries are to commit to this gender scorecard and to provide a set of data that can be improved annually starting 2022. The pilot study is planned with 1 or 2 countries in each region. And we expect to, from this study, to create visibility in engineering on gender barriers, disparities, gaps, leadership roles, and retention and progress of females in engineering in the long run. The immediate scorecard may not be able to give us all this information, but in the long run, we expect it to give us this information. So I'm aware from discussions and also from Sarah's presentation that INWES is working on gender perceptions, very detailed, very good presentation. It focuses, I think, on personal experiences, but I think the data is needed to synergize the information and to access information thoroughly and properly, to actually know the number of people, like to actually know the number of people, the number of engineers. So we are thinking that collaborating disaggregated data and gender perceptions, if we can come together and we create a blueprint for action and to be considered and agreed. So the WIE is ready to collaborate for success. And thank you very much for inviting me and for listening to me. I hope I've said a bit. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yetunde. That was a very comprehensive presentation for us to become familiar with your activities at WFEO YEE, and also your plans about collecting the disaggregated data in Africa. I think is very much in line with what INWES has been trying to do. We started doing a similar project with the APNN countries, and so I think collaboration with WFEO YEE will be very meaningful in the sense that we can target both Africa and Asia together. And we all realize that there is a big need for data on women in STEM. So thank you very much. I wish we had more time for discussions, but I think we're running short of time. So I think we'll move on to our next, and we will leave the discussion part for our future webinars, and also for the chat room for those of you who would like to ask questions to Yetunde. Thank you very much. The next in our program today is our Vice President, Education and Research, Professor Battsengel Baatar, who will give us a brief introduction of the programs of the Education and Research Committee of INWES. Battsengel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jung, and thank you for this introduction. May I share my slides? I will make it very brief because we are running out of time. Can you hear me well? So,
okay, Yetunde, can you stop sharing? Then
I beg your pardon. Sorry about that. I need to take off my voice as well.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Can you see this now? Okay. Good. So good morning and good afternoon and also good evening, dear colleagues and the INWES member and guests of today's webinar. And firstly, I would like to thank the KWSE for project funding of this important survey study, and also all the members of advisory board for your valuable commitment. And my special thanks to Dr. Sarah Pierce for conducting all these challenging duties. And of course, our President, Jung Kim, for her consistent support and coordination. And here I'm gonna talk about a little bit about the Education and Research Committee, which is a standing committee of the board of INWES. And our role is to advise on matters of relating research, academia, and education that impact on areas of interest of INWES. And we have following duties that we are aiming to identify potential partners for collaboration. For instance, today we have a very valuable partner here, WFEO, and which we can collaborate in the future in education and research area, and also to support other executive board members with managing communications and finances memberships and other links to invest partners in areas of education and research. And we also to aim to provide advocacy for women in STEM at all stages of their education and careers in research and academia, and also to plan and undertake research and training activities to support INWES mission. And our committee is newly established, and I'm also the new member of the board of director of INWES, and actually I'm a member of the WSTM in Mongolia since 2012, and establishment of this network in Mongolia, and we are also a member organization of the APNN, which is also the one of the regional network of INWES. And this year we are to 2021, we have our research committee is newly established, as I said, and we have some we have some meetings and to plan of this annual plan. And of course, in this year, we had the one of important project was this INWES at KWSE International Collaborative Policy Research, GISE, which is presented by Ansar, the first the part of the webinar which we have now. And we have also an additional project which we have applied as electrifying women. And of course, that's also very interesting and important project, but the moment we have not yet received the last approval of this project application. And additionally, of course, next year's our committee plan is that we get research or educational related projects from the different funding organizations. And here and on this stage, of course, is very important your support and your collaboration of our regional network and also INWES members and our partner organizations. And we have participated also in the Fallen World Engage X event in UB, and that's actually an international event in since 2011 in Germany, in Berlin, is every year organize this event, and that's for the young researchers and also for the entrepreneurs and innovators that they can present their idea and research on in different the participated parties from business and from research and from politics, and that they get also the cooperation and also the funding opportunities. So one of the member country is our country, Mongolia, and we are doing this Fallen World Engage. And this year we also collaborated with the INWES and members, and that our INWES members participated in this event and also made some did a very valuable presentation and commitment on this, and on this stage I would like also thank Sarah and Sima and Jun Sung Kim for your actively participation and also the support of this event. And also our members participated at the international conference, Network Gender STEM conference in 2021. It's an online and hybrid form conference in Australia. And the paper and research work from our members as provided to this conference, and we had also a webinar and workshop. Then we had the last part was the Fallen World Lab Engage Hub, also one of the colliding event in Mongolia, and our members also here supported, and this is one part was the engagers, the scientific engagers presented their idea and their work among of the scientists, and that there were several international people, international scientists or international engagers participated in this event. And these were our this year's work work, and then next year is that's depending on our strategic goal, of course. And we have, as this year is the INWES Board of Directors, one of the very important work was the set our strategic goals for 2021 to 2023, and those 5 areas of strategic goal were set, and our committee, research, education and research, is responsible for strategic goal 4, promote education opportunities. And as you see in frame of this strategic goal, the following actions are set, and these are to identify educational programs that are funded by UNESCO for INWES and involvement, and the secondly, support and expand regional network programs, Women in Science Survey, like KWSE-INWES Joint Project, similar projects, and also to participate in Women in STEM Survey in educational projects. We are aiming to participate in so Mother in Science and also Electrifying a Woman. And the last one is to ensure educational opportunities and shared among organizational and regional network and communicate through website. So here I would like also mention the Korean Young Researcher Camp, and which are, it's very famous in Mongolia, and every year this the young researchers are aiming to participate in this important the camp. So on this stage, I would really like to appeal all of you to support and to collaborate and to share your opinion and idea what we can do in next year and what we can do in the future to develop education and research in STEM field. Yeah, that's what I would really appeal from you, and very appreciate to be here, and thank you for all, and nice to see you. And I would also like to present here our colleague, my WSTEM president Arun Bolor Purve is also participating here. She is the chair of the APN network now this year, and we are very having a challenge now to organize the serve as a chair country of the APN, which the first time our country is in this role. Okay, thank you very much. It's just a little bit long. Okay.
Thank you very much, Battsengel, for giving us an overview of the activities of the Education and Research Committee programs and activities of INWES, and I welcome all of you to participate and give your ideas or share your ideas with us. So now I would like to finish up with a very brief future plans for our, especially our GISE project. As Sarah has mentioned, this year's project was a pilot study, And we are hoping to continue on with this project in the year 2022. And very fortunately, KWSE has agreed to support us again for this project next year. The details and the funding has not been decided exactly yet, but we will be receiving funding, and I think the funding will be a little more increased. We're expecting about $4,500 more in support from last year. So there is a lot that we can do next year. And this is why we would very much welcome the partnership of WFEO in the study next year, so that we can start collecting data from the African continent as well as from Asia. And putting this together, I think we can bring a lot of message. We can empower women in STEM more with the studies that we will be conducting. So I ask for your support, and I look forward to more discussions with you. And again, as I said, this is not going to be our last webinar. We will have more webinars next year, and with more data to discuss. We ask for your participation. For those of you who would like to receive more information from us, please leave your email address in the chat box, and we will contact you very soon again. I would like to thank everyone for your cooperation, and especially thank KWSE for the continuous support. And I really look forward to more numbers on women in STEM in 2022, so that we can eventually build a better future worldwide through the full participation of women and girls in STEM. Before I end, I would like to invite Sarah for any additional comments or anything else that you would like to add before we close.
No, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Yetunde. Thank you, Battsengel. And thank you, of course, KWSE and Jung Kim for this opportunity to work on this project. I've enjoyed it very much when it's worked, and I've enjoyed it even more when it hasn't worked, when we've had problems. So, but we've had very few problems. And thank you so much to the volunteers and the people involved in disseminating the survey. I know it's not an easy job to get people to respond to surveys at all. And every response back is valuable. So I just did want to say, I know Jung Park has mentioned in the chat to me that that result around Mongolian men was not unusual. It has been mentioned as well in the chat more publicly, but also that Korean men in particular situations are also very well aware. So I'm going to do a bit of a comparison. I've got to do more of a comparison with past results so that I don't assume things about errors. But it would be very nice to find out how come they're so aware, and can we take lessons from that to use in other countries. So thank you very much to everybody for taking part today. If you have any burning questions or comments, I think we do have a few minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes. But also, if you do also want to contact me, I've put the email up. If you put anything into the chat, I'll make sure that we address it either individually or maybe even in the actual report. Had one final comment, which is, can we have a picture, please, of everybody in the in the seminar? So please, yes, please, can we all join the open up our videos and join in, and I'll stop sharing as long as you have an email address. And if you can all join in, and let me just move this. If people could please take photos, that would be great, because my screenshots don't always work very well. Here we go.
Okay.
Smile, please.
Smile.
Wow.
I think we can all wave.
Yeah, I did as well.
Okay, good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
So hope to
Thanks,
see you
everyone.
again. Thank
Yeah,
you.
see you
all.
again.
Merry
See you soon.
Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes,
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
New Year. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Enjoy the holiday.
Oh, and just one more thing. We have another webinar coming up on Monday. So, and this is going to be on women policy and science diplomacy. We have excellent speakers there as well. So please join us for the webinar on Monday. And we have our extraordinary general meeting on Wednesday next week. Even if you're not a member, you're welcome to join us. Please visit our website for more information. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
holiday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
장현정 선생님, 갔구나. 네. Thank you so much, Sarah. It was great.
Yeah, no, thank you to everybody for taking part. Thank you so much. Hello, Mary.
Oh, Mary's
So much
nice.
for being here. I'm
think-
just checking for any final questions before I close. And thank you, Seema. Yes, your efforts in India were very well worth it.
Thank you, all of you.
Hello, everyone. I am in the field.
Ah.
I was
Hi,
listening from the
Mary.
field. Yes,
Mary, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. That was well done.
Okay, see you
Thank you.
next.
Oh, I
Oh,
like your
Yeah, I'm
hat.
in the banana farm.
Ah,
Yes,
Let me take your
that
picture.
was those were very interesting presentations. But I'm sad that we didn't have enough data from Africa.
don't
We'll
worry.
have more next year.
Yeah, we will have more. I mean, part of the remit of the project, part of the aims was to find out how to do it so that it was easier for people.
Yes.
So yes, so there were certain gaps, and in fact, one of the issues, of course, in ARN, you may remember, Mary, was Fatoumata was the disseminator, and of
Yes.
course, she very sadly passed away, and that's, I don't think. Yeah,
Yes,
can't
yes.
foresee
So
that, and
we,
it's-
of course, there are some lessons learned so that
Yeah.
we can do it better next time.
Yeah, but I think yes, I think it was just, I have to say, I felt very sad when with the passing of Fatoumata, and I had
Yes.
no appetite at that point to be talking about unimportant matters like surveys. I think.
Yes, yes, yes. But that's life.
Yes.
That's like.
So you all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
you.
Thank you all. Thank
And
you.
thank you, Dr. Park. 박진아 박사님 감사합니다. Bye.
Thank you.
I just want to also say thank you for your excellent job. And just I have this question about I don't, maybe I should send you email, but
Send me an
if I
email as well,
understand, yeah, if I understand your report, you said that in the biological science, the women, they feel more barrier than compared to other fields. Is
It
that
looks
person right?
globally, and
Although
I
we
have to
have-
say, yeah, no, I have to say, when you look at the values, the mean values, they're not that different, but they are statistically significantly different, if that makes sense. So they are sensing a little bit more, so it is real that they sense more barriers. So I think it is very interesting because, of course, a lot of the work in engineering, in gender and engineering, is just to increase the numbers of women.
Right.
But we
Right,
do
so-
know that in the biological sciences, we have a lot of women, and in medicine, we have masses of women, but they have leadership issues. They have big gender issues, even though there's a lot of women. So a lot of women is the first step. But the next step is actually we still have to change some cultures and ways of working and workplaces, etc.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's really great and very important point we have to make actually.
Yes.
People say more women, and I think they will solve everything,
Yeah.
but it is not. So I think it's really important. So
And
thank you.
sometimes, thank you, Gina. This is my personal belief, so this is not not based on, maybe the survey will eventually tell us this, but I'm wondering if the first thing we do is change culture and workplace, and then the women will come, and then the women will stay, and as Yetunde talked about, the retention of women is very important. I totally
President.
agree.
Hi, everyone. Mary, hi.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Mary, Johnson, Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, every one of you, Rufina. Hi.
How are you?
We're
Nice
all well. We're all
to
well.
see
I
you.
was there.
But
I
thank you.
was there.
I see you. I have seen you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everyone
Okay,
stay
so-
healthy. Stay healthy, and we'll see you
Bye.
next year.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
감사합니다.
Hi,
네,
Johnson.
감사합니다.
Okay, Sarah, I'll see you Monday. Thank you.
Monday. Thank you
Bye,
very much.
Johnson. Bye. Bye,
Bye,
Sarah.
Ocon.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Aminata.
Bye.